You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Hello and welcome back to Reaction Crew, brought to you by those Griffin Nerf herders at fanthatracks.com. So this is our second episode of Reaction Crew, covering all the events and thoughts and theories of episode 3 of Skeleton Crew, entitled Very Interesting, has an Astrogation Problem. As you may remember, we accidentally blasted off from the serene and suburban sprawl of Atin on board the Onyx Cinder, a pirate ship that has long been hidden in the forest, was stumbled upon by a ragtag group of younglings led by Wim and Fern, and their sidekicks Neil and KB. Last week, we left our adventurers about to escape a brig on Port Borgo with the help of Jedi scoundrel Jod Narnarwood, who, with a gleam in his eye, wants to help the kids get back to their home planet and the undiscovered, untapped riches of our Aten.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file.
That doesn't sound too hard.
Boom! This is Making Tracks.
This is the way.
Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
I know these people. They are brutal. Does this look Jedi to you?
That's not how the Force works.
They'll never see it coming.
Count me in.
So, joining me this week are two scoundrels with fire in their bellies and mad schemes in their hearts. It's my first mate, Mark Newbold, and swabbing the poop deck is our very own Roger the Cabin Boy and fellow Fantha Tracker, Sander de Lange. So, let's start at the top then, Sander. How are you finding Skeleton Crew, and how did you find this episode?
Well, I always loved my pirate stories, ever since Treasure Island, so I was really looking forward to the series. Honestly, it started a bit mediocre-ish for me, a bit too much leaning on those 80s movies like Stand By Me, Goonies and stuff like that, and I was like, yeah, I've seen this already. But this episode for me really pulled everything together and elevated it, in my opinion.
It's always that weird thing when you start a new Star Wars series, isn't it? You're trying to find your feet a little bit. We're trying to work out what the themes are and what the take is on the galaxy. How have you been finding just the overall adventure side? Is the tone right for you? Is it kind of landing?
It has, yeah. It really has landed in perfectly for me, yeah. It's more classic Star Wars as it should be. Just fun adventure and go with the flow, or go with the Force.
Exactly, go with the Force. So what about you, Mark? How did you find this episode?
I went on Disney Plus. I went to most what? Sorry, I found it really good. Sorry, mate. I really enjoyed it. I like Sander says, the first two episodes are so different to this one because now they're out in the galaxy and they're actually on the adventure, whereas the first couple of episodes were sort of establishing the characters, the settings, the world, and it was the gateway to adventure, if you like. Especially the end of episode 1 and 2, they really get into it. This one, yeah, the pirate aspect I'm loving. That's very enjoyable. It's mega on the nose, like we said last week. It's really, no doubt this is a pirate show. But I kind of like that. It suits Star Wars, and the Crimson Jack mention absolutely nails that flag to the mast because there couldn't be more of a real Star Wars nod to that sort of lifestyle, if you like. I really enjoyed it. I like all the new characters that came into it. The little flashback to Atatim was good as well. Just to remind us that Wim's dad does give a crap, because there's been lots of stuff online saying what a terrible dad he is. He's not a terrible dad.
Nah.
He's in bits. So I liked the little touches like that. But as we get into this episode, there's a lot to enjoy, I think.
Yeah, I think what's quite nice about it was that it literally just started, didn't it? It just started where the last one ended. They're trying to escape the brig, but it's always kind of like. At the time, again, it's something we've touched on before, and really speaking about it in the sequel trilogy, it's just like this whole notion of like how the average, galaxy citizen kind of really, what they know and what they think about like the Jedi and stuff. And you can see like Wim's kind of, he's got them up on a pedestal already, whereas you can see that Fern's a little bit more kind of she's a bit more sussed as to like actually what is like Jod's kind of like real motivation. That she's not quite really kind of buying the whole kind of thing and stuff. So
she's a bit more Han Solo about it, isn't she? She's got that Han Solo vibe.
Yeah, she's definitely skeptical. I mean, very much. She's got that, and actually that's one of the things that I've kind of liked in this series, and it is very on the nose how they do it, but like all these lines that they've kind of taken from the OT and they've just ever so slightly adjusted to kind of fit their script without it just feeling like it's wedged in, which I think is really fun.
Well, that's the real trick, isn't it? So
yeah. Exactly. And even the Ishi Tip pirate also quoted Han from the Katina.
Exactly, yeah, and I think actually, guess what that's kind of doing is it's almost just kind of like embedding the vernacular, like that we get from the OT, kind of more into the day-to-day kind of like use of the galaxy. So as I think you said like last time, Mark, when was it Wim kind of mentions, oh, that's so wizard. We only know like one other person to say it, but the fact that there's now two in the galaxy at least, you kind of go, okay, that's fair enough. That's just like an accepted kind of like term for coolness.
But one thing that Star Wars has struggled with, I think, in the past, and it feels like they're finding their feet with it now, is that in our world, 2024 back end, talking as we do, we don't realise, but there's lots of colloquialisms. And in Star Wars, there would also be local but regional and sector and galactic colloquialisms that wouldn't make sense to us without it being explained. So when you can just pepper in a few little phrases like that feels like, well, they're still speaking English, but they're just adding in these little, like when the kid turned up at Fern's place last week, on the speeder bike, and he was the Bob Falfa character from Graffiti, and they kind of gave him a slightly different accent. He just kind of felt a little bit different.
Mate, sorry to interrupt, but that was the one thing that really jarred the hell out of me, because it was so badly ADR'd and overdubbed. It just didn't work. And I was like, that's really weird. Did that guy's voice sound so bad that they felt like they needed to kind of like...
Well, I think that was a purposeful thing. I think they did that. I think they gave him a sort of an accent and a tone, and like some city kids try and talk street and it just sounds wrong. It just felt like that to me. And it just feels like they're building this sort of vibe of colloquialism so that you can watch it and somebody will say wizard, you won't, and eventually we won't go, oh, he said wizard. You'll just go, yeah, wizard. I think that's what they're building towards.
So Sander, what that whole scene back on Atom with the parents and stuff, I mean, there's definitely something quite not right, or at least we're not getting the full picture with what's going on the planet. Why are they, why can't they go beyond the barrier? What's who's the supervisor and stuff like that. Have you had any thoughts, Matt? And also because obviously I know you're kind of like a bit of a lore guy and stuff. Have you noticed any kind of like Easter eggs or kind of callbacks to some of the iconography that we've been seeing on the planet, like that big kind of mural in the house and stuff?
Yeah, well, I was about to say the big mural is one of the big giveaways, because in the mural we see humans, an Ithorian, and one of Neil's species. And to me, it looks like something like we are the founding fathers of the planet. And that's what is being depicted. Earlier in the episodes, we also had the mention of the Great Work, which is reminiscent of what's been done in the High Republic. The great works of Supreme Chancellor Lina So. And there has been quite a few references to the High Republic era. So I really think that, we obviously still don't know how the High Republic will end. But I think something at that time period made those 9 worlds that we see in the scroll in this episode.
Yeah.
Because there were 9 worlds and only Etin apparently is left. Who knows why? But I'm starting to feel like that maybe those are the 9 original worlds that started the Republic or something like that. And that's why they are so important and valuable. And something happened, and only Etin is obviously left. And who knows? Because the whole scroll in the episode, they did had Arabic on it. Mm-hmm. Really badly to read, and the sentences weren't complete, which was obviously done on purpose for people like me who were like, ooh, let's translate everything here. It's still a bit of a mystery, but yeah, there is more to the story, and I'm pretty sure we will find out in a few episodes from now. Probably won't be next week, but more towards the end of the run.
I'm just wondering, you mentioned the 9 planets there, and that Atin's probably the last one left. James Mangold's about to kick off with his sort of Jedi Prime, Dawn of the Jedi, whatever they call it, film, hopefully filming next year. I just wonder whether or not, if he's going way, way, way back, that Atin could potentially get a mention. If it is one of those prime early worlds, I mean, I know Legends did that way back when with different sort of empires, the Eternal Empire and all that stuff way back when. I just wonder whether or not there could be a sort of a canon version of that, and that Atin could be part of it.
Would make sense to me, yeah. I mean, and basically, we know we've seen in The Last Jedi on Acto also that the first primordial Jedi mosaic. So maybe that will also be tied into it.
Yeah. Feels like a Filoni thing.
Yes, exactly. It's Filoni, so who knows?
Yeah. It could even tie into season 2 of Ahsoka.
Totally. Another galaxy.
Exactly, yeah.
This is Steve Bloom, voice of Zebralios, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks. Caravast. May the force be with you.
It doesn't look like there's a clear indigenous species on Atin as such.
Maybe the green one.
Maybe the green one, yeah. It kind of almost looks like everybody's been shipped there or like transplanted there, maybe for a reason.
They did mention the money, Mark, didn't they? The money was meant. The kids talk about it in this one about, they're all saying one's an analyst, one's this, one's that, and it kind of almost say it like Jod says. The kids are the clue to getting back to Atin by what they say and the information they give, as straight down the line as it would be that kids would say. That they kind of come to the realization that money could be the thing. You've got these beautiful Gold Republic credits, and my first thought was, and it's not the Bank of Argyle, but it's kind of that. Maybe it's that sort of thing. We've seen a bank heist in Andor.
Yeah.
We know there's places out there. It might be a bit like, I don't know, Crystal Skull, when Indy says, well, the real treasure was knowledge, and it's something a bit sort of up in the wind like that. I don't know.
Yeah, and I also am reminded of something else from Legends, because in Legends, in the Maw at the castle, we had Dala with her completely closed off from the galaxy science lab base, whatever it was. So I'm thinking, could this also be something like that?
Yeah.
Something completely locked away from the galaxy for whatever reason, and it will stir up some trouble down the line.
They've set out the whole war. They didn't even know that Alderaan doesn't exist anymore.
No.
And the fact they're still carrying around freshly minted Republic Dactarism out, then you're like, well, that means that they're pre-Empire, at least. So probably even further before that. So, I mean, you kind of think just, with the whole kind of marketing kind of like hat on, you kind of go, well, I bet it will tie into High Republic. It's probably that's kind of the time that maybe that was set up or something, because there's something kind of like slightly prefab about all those houses. Like they've almost just been kind of like dropped there, perfectly. You kind of think like sometimes with colonization, it's all a bit haphazard and things kind of like develop in a more natural way. But that was pretty ordered and very kind of like, straight and kind of sterile, really, in some respects,
Outside of the kids' adventures, I'm interested enough in Atin to want to know how it got to where it got, sort of thing.
You only see them like once, don't you, in the episode, the parents and stuff. But like Wendell Wimstad, he's obviously concerned, but he's kind of like I think he's starting to think, hang on a sec, something's not quite right.
Yes,
something's happened, and now he's starting to maybe question, why can't we go beyond the barrier?
And they've never had reason to question the security or anything before. It's probably been a generational thing, isn't it?
Oh, totally.
Well, especially with what Fern's mother said. I ran away, and they eventually find me anyway.
The droids,
Yeah, the droids. So she's basically all convinced that, everything is good in the world, everything is how it should be, and the system works.
And which one of those has been lied to? I'm waggling the air quotes, lied to the most. She's in a position of authority, isn't she? That's the sense you get. She's somebody, whereas, the other kids' parents are as they say, one's an analyst and, one's in what, they're all in that sort of realm of work. Who's been lied to the most is if you all told the same lie, no one's been lied to any more than anybody else. But if you're in a position of authority, then you kind of would feel like, hang on, I should know this. And they don't. So
yeah, and I do think she does know that she does that she knows more than she's letting on.
Yes,
because she is like, well, I'm going to contact the supervisor, and it's like, well, all right, you have the direct line too, so you probably know more.
And that's going to be an interesting moment, when we find out who this supervisor is, because I'm just getting Wizard of Oz vibes.
Totally. I'm expecting a cameo from Jeff Goldblum or something.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I thought was just really cool about, because we didn't really talk about like the pirate outpost like last week, not in any great detail, but I do really like this kind of galaxy far, far away spin on kind of like more of a nautical kind of way of traveling through the stars. And there's something very kind of tactile about that whole kind of like area, isn't it? Like, Port Borgo's got that kind of, I mean, it's obviously a very much like a den of inequity and scum and villainy, but I just like how like, as a a driver of an electric vehicle, right? You can't literally pull away if your car is plugged into like a charging port. So you kind of think, how the hell would they even let like ships fire up, like if they're refueling or something like that, But I really like that. I like how that kind of, there's a very kind of nautical kind of vibe about it, like the cables and the masts and stuff.
Yeah, like they're anchored, like they're actually anchored there.
Yeah, pretty much. Like that's just it. Like somebody needs to kind of like bring up the anchor and set sail and stuff.
It makes you realise how important. I used to play a lot of Western games role play stuff, and you'd land at a starport. The first thing you do was pay the portmaster, and get your ship fueled or whatever it was. All those practical things that you had to do when you landed, because a good GM would keep track of. You've done X amount of whatevers, and you've only got this much fuel left, and you had to make sure you did it. And so you realise the portmaster's the first and best person to bribe if you need to. Yeah. So if there's a portmaster in charge of that port, which presumably there would be, apart from the fact he's directing a hell of a lot of traffic, I just love that they take the little shuttle, with Teak. Well, they didn't have Teak with them that time, did they, going back? But with a character like that or whoever it might be, taking you back to your vessel, and then you disengage correctly, and it's a whole process. You don't just rock up like most of the places we've seen in Star Wars. Cloud City, you just rock up, land.
Pretty much,
yeah. They got refueled, but we've never considered this before. In this process, there is a process. You have to disengage, you have to disembark, you probably have to let them know that you're leaving, because you see this beautiful asteroid with that sort of port area set within it. And it does look like piers. There's a moment when you see it right at the edge of the field that's protecting the whole thing, and you see somebody walk to the edge, turn around and walk back, and it's just like a pier at the edge of the ocean. I just thought little touches like that were really interesting.
Yeah, it's a really nice kind of like design, like language that they've kind of really created for this.
Sorry, Mike. Sandy, you mentioned last week's guide that was from one of the old young readers books. Which one was it? I forget now.
Yes, it was from one of those, if I remember correctly, one of those with the solo kids being trained as Jedi.
Yeah, so Young Jedi Knights.
Yeah, from 1959 or something like that. So, yeah, it really is an old pool. Well, like, well, that's surprising.
Yeah.
But then again, they also referenced the holiday special, so they know their stuff.
Well, I mean, that's one thing that I was actually going to ask you, if you think that so far anyway. I mean, I know we're only 3 episodes in, but has this probably got more kind of like nods and Easter eggs, OT and just Star Wars Legends and stuff like that?
Well, definitely way more than Ahsoka, because that one was quite light, and they were really trying to establish their own thing. Mandalorian had a fair share of really good pulls. I mean, it already started with the weapon that did the Djarin War, which was also from the Holiday Special cartoon. But yeah, I do think that with each series, it gets more outrageous or something like that. Because when The Mandalorian started, I would have never expected them to recreate the circus segment from the holiday special for a series.
Sure. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose that's it, isn't it? As each series goes on, there's less and less like things that hasn't been inserted into another like streaming series. So they have to dig and they have to cut deeper, don't they?
Yeah, and I think in your guide today, Sander, you mentioned the vessels. You list a lot of the vessels that were in there, and there was vessels that were seen for the first time in Kenobi, and there's stuff from actually further down the line that you realise are older ships. Stuff from Rise of Skywalker and so on. Star Tours is in there. The Star Speeder's in there.
Yeah, well, which is of course a personal favourite of mine. I mean, every time something of Star Tours pops in, I'm like, yes, there we go again. But yeah, of course. It makes sense that they have the assets from the new stuff lying around anyway, so they can always throw something from Kenobi in. I mean, a whole bunch of the aliens that we have seen throughout the various series is basically the same mask, different costume.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's always surprising when they add something new to it.
And you mentioned, again, I'm referring to your guide because we've got you on, so it'd be crazy not to mention the guide and the work that you do for it. But it lists a lot of the worlds. There's a list of about 15 planets that you sort of divine from that map that are all on the Hydian Way, which is sort of the big transgalactic hyperspace lane, isn't it? So do you think that gives us any clues to where Atatin might be, or is that still a bit sketchy at the moment?
It would not surprise me. I mean, why else put most of the worlds from the Hydian Way there? I mean, obviously it's one of the big hyperspace routes anyway. I mean, it's basically, I think, the Route 66 of Star Wars.
Yeah.
So it would make sense, but I also think that at Etin maybe is more in the deep core, that whole area in the middle that isn't the most explored of worlds.
Where Biss was and Vulpser and all that.
Which was also quite the secluded world from the galaxy, because Palpatine ruled Bish. And I was like, I'm keeping that for myself. So maybe this at Etin is also the analog of Bish in a way.
Yeah.
But in a way, nicer way, because Bish was quite a terrible world to live in. But if it's indeed the Hydian Way and at Etin is on there, then it would also make sense why they went so quickly so far away, because it's one of the most traveled hyperspace routes.
Yeah, I liked it last week when KB was sort of sitting there. She's got that Lobot vibe, hasn't she? Yeah. And he's just sort of sat there, and John walked past and said, "Don't you ever sleep?" And they had that little exchange. And then he says, "Get some rest. It's going to take us hours to get to my friend's place," sort of thing. And the sense that in the more recent sort of Star Wars projects, it's felt like getting from one side of the galaxy to the other takes a couple of hours, which has frustrated the hell out of me. But in this, and Mark knows this, he hears it every week, but in this one, you get the feeling that to travel from A to Z or wherever takes a significant amount of time. And I really appreciated that, the fact that get some rest because you've got hours to go. Alderaan to Tatooine is not a short distance, even though in the show, in Star Wars, it feels like, he comes out the cockpit, they have a 20-minute exchange, and they're, we're up at Alderaan. There's obviously things have happened. It's a stretch of time. So
that's what they do beautifully, even in A New Hope already. I mean, you got the whole training, the dialogue, and then a whole bunch on the Death Star, and then they are there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I suppose that's it. Whereas I think that's probably what it is. It's just a compression of time via editing, really, isn't it? To some extent. They just like, do you know what? We're not going to do anything in the ship. We're just going to go from A to B. You can cut out all that stuff. But I think sometimes, in some respects, time just gets compressed. Now, obviously, it could just be because the ship just doesn't actually travel that fast in hyperspace because it's an old ship. All we know,
Could be that. Could be that.
So, because maybe when that ship first launched somewhere, I don't know, from say like Corellia to somewhere else, all those pirates were like the kids' age. And then by the time we get there, we're all old men.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
we end up going to this observatory moon where Jod kind of says, oh, I've got a friend who can kind of help, which of course smells like a double cross.
And it was.
And it was. I mean, even down to who Jod is, it wasn't very well hidden that he was the pirate at the opening of episode 1. It's funny because you kind of watch it and you just go, well, that was obvious. But actually, it was enjoyably obvious. It wasn't built up. So, like, when it does happen, you're like, oh, that's a letdown. There's no double blinds and stuff like that. So it's just all kind of part of the caper, which I think is really fun. And I think that's what the directors are really, and the writers have kind of got that right kind of tone to do that. So, I'm sure there's some people out there who are like, oh, I wonder who he is. I think it's a nice kind of balance, isn't it? It's pushing it forward.
But that's the same thing with the double cross. I mean, the moment he said, oh, we'll go to an old friend, you're like, yeah, double cross.
Yeah.
The very first scene with the old friend, yeah, I have to stall because, you're coming, all right, we'll go to stall. So, yeah, double cross already confirmed and moving on.
Which, of course, then that creates that dramatic irony of, like, we know that, like, they're being stalled, but we don't know who's kind of coming. Whereas, obviously, they're just kind of blissfully unaware, which obviously kind of creates that kind of tension.
And it says a lot about Jod as well. He not that he picks up on that because he's savvy and he's also, in his line of work, you'd imagine, kind of suspicious of everybody around him. There's that moment on the ramp. And again, the kids are lost in space, literally, And here he is. He's basically saying, well, I'm lost. I've lost my people as well. And he's brought it on himself. The kids are just kids. Wim is going to push any button that's flashing at him, So, they're victims of circumstance, if you like. They didn't intend for this to happen. Most things that's happened to Jod, we would surmise, certainly from the opening sequence of the first episode, is pretty much led by avarice. He's breaking into that ship and they're boarding that ship because he's opening that great big vault expecting to find thousands and thousands, if not more, of credits, and there's one credit. I want to know who left that one credit on the floor because there's a connection there. We've got to find out who screwed him over.
Well, I was going to say that's the big thing, isn't it? It's like somebody must have known that he was coming ahead of time. Otherwise, you wouldn't do that.
I'm so hoping for Honda or Naka.
Yes.
It's a pirate show. We already have him in Galaxy's Edge, perfectly well animated with an animatronic or something. Do him live action already.
Yes. Yeah. Didn't we see a ship last week? Wasn't his ship at Port Borgo?
His ship was at Port Borgo. Yes, it was.
Yeah. So there you go. I mean, you would think that he'll be sniffing around. Maybe that's kind of like the episode 6 kind of big surprise or something.
There's only 1,000 people in the galaxy, Mark. Come on, we know this. There's only 1,000 people.
Is that most of them live on Tatooine? So
that's right. Yeah.
But I mean, in fairness, when we were, as we were on our way to meet Kim and the observatory moon, which looks strangely like a top of a Dalek. Did you notice that? I was kind of hoping, so therefore slightly disappointed it wasn't Maz Kanata, because I thought that would have been a perfect little segue into kind of like joining that kind of time period up.
I've seen a few people online say they kind of wish it was Maz. I mean, we know Maz was at her castle.
Yeah.
And that visual of that, the world behind the moon was very cool. That Sander, you mentioned Stand By Me earlier. There's that sort of Stand By Me shot of the kids, wasn't there? That was very cool. But yeah, if it had been Maz, because we know Maz gets out and about. She's off on a mission in Last Jedi, so we know she gets around, and she's probably got little places all over the shop.
Loads of hideouts.
Maz would have been very cool.
It would still be possible because there were like 3 or so voices talking, whether it was like women 1, women 2, women 3 or something.
Yeah.
And they can still have her be one of those, even if the voice didn't sound anything like Lupita, but...
Yeah. So was it Kim who was the one who was... Yeah, because like you said, there was that conversation, wasn't there? And was it Kim that was the one who said, I'm going to stall them? So, who were the other couple of voices, So
I mean, the one lady sounded a bit... Ruth picked up on this as we were watching it together, because that sounds like Ray. And I think Helen Sadler, who's Matt Wood's girlfriend, she's one of the Loop group, the voice groups, and she voices Ray in the Lego animated shows. So it just felt like a little... Who's that voice? Is that... That's not Ray, because it's way too early for it to be Ray. Maybe, I don't know. Well, I don't know what they were quite kind of going with that, but it was noticeable that it just sounded like Ray, but it's not Ray.
It's not
Hey, but probably, as you said, she is in the Loop group, so
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it would surprise me if we have heard David Collins also already, but just don't realize it.
Yeah.
Totally.
Well, we've heard Matt Wood because we saw the Battle Droid, so we know Matt Wood's in it.
And Alan Molina, wasn't it? You know.
Yeah, Alfred Molina was in there. He was the Ishi Tib pirate, so that was cool. So they're throwing some tasty little tidbits in there. It's great fodder for you, Sander. It's brilliant.
Oh yeah.
Well, but
something to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just means you just have lots to write in your guide. That's what it is, you know. I mean, because you had the droids. You know, you obviously had to have the B1 battle droid, and you had the the
CZ droid.
CZ droid that Anthony Daniels plays outside Docking Bay 94, and obviously Death Star droid. You know, who's kind of like danger. You know,
where's the prince? Yeah.
So I want to know that story. That's gotta be a Marvel comic, hasn't it? That's a one shot written.
It's a Marvel one shot, or it's a short story in Insider. It's one or the other.
Yeah, totally right. Yeah. Maybe it's a prince from the Hapes cluster or something like that. You know, so.
Could be.
Yeah, bring that back.
Yeah, well, the Apes cluster is still one of the few things from Legends that hasn't quite returned.
Yeah. But I think that was partly because they were quite OP, weren't they? They were quite overpowered, and they had quite a large kind of territory and empire and stuff. And so, they I think they kind of were used a couple of times more as like a Deus Ex Machina of just like, oh, how are we going to get out of this? I know we're going to just call the cavalry from the Hapes cluster because you know. We're really cool. So
they happened a few times during the New Jedi Order.
Exactly. Yeah. So so actually coming up. So what did you guys think of like him as a character, and you know, because it's, you know, what, half owl, half cat, kind of like, you know, a cat mated with an owl. I don't know. There's a nursery rhyme there somewhere, isn't there?
There is.
You know, an owl and pussycat.
Quite an interesting, fun character. I don't think we have seen the last of her yet. I am slightly bit annoyed that the official website doesn't give the species a name.
Yeah,
it's still like, an unknown alien species at this time. Like, just give her the name already and be done with it. But I do like. I mean, it's also still a bit of symbolism. I mean, an owl is a wise creature, and here we have someone who knows a lot about star charts, worlds, and stuff like that. So it all fits nicely together. And she's obviously a good character, because the first thing she tries to do is get the kids away from the con man.
You think back to Bad Batch though, and we thought that of Sid. We thought Sid, she's a nice Trandoshan, and she sold them out in the end. You know, so you never quite know. But I do agree. I think Kim. Yeah, the symbolism of the owl is very on the nose or on the beak, and also that, like Mark says, you know, there's an element of cat in there which is sort of stealthy, and it is a Filoni thing where he does like his analogies and he likes to sort of signpost things. So I'd be disappointed if it was that obvious. But by the same token, this show so far has you know, it's not hiding that it's a pirate show. And we're not sitting here complaining that it's such a pirate show. It's, you know, it's like, oh yeah, all these little things are working. So if it works, then go with it. I like the character. I like the voice. I like the little connection she had with KB as well, because of all the kids so far, KB is the one we've kind of got to know the least. And there was a little moment, KB on the ramp as well with Jod, when she's kind of saying, well, you work for us. You know, she's getting a bit of, not backbone, that's not fair, that makes out that she's weak, and she's not. But, you know, she's just being a bit more forthcoming now. She feels like she's got or it feels to me like she's probably getting a handle on the situation quicker than the other kids are. You know, because Neil's just going to trip over everything and be Neil. And Wim just look, you know, Wim's a kid, he's a 10-year-old kid, he's going to just look for anything that's going to, you know, cause trouble. And Fern's streetwise in the children's world on At-Atim, but out here she's not streetwise any more than anyone.
Hello there, you beautiful people. This is Steve Evans, Senior Design Director for Star Wars at Hasbro, and you are listening to, you guessed it, Fantha Tracks.
There's something about Kim really reminded me of Bubo from Clash of the Titans, the
It's a
owl
good
and map.
spot.
There's something about that. I'm guessing it was a puppet character.
I've not seen how they did Kim, because I mean we've seen a lot this week of Neil, part ILM, part Legacy.
Maybe they've got like a static puppet that they kind of like do for the close-ups and the interaction with the kids and that. But then like when she's flying around, that's all got to be, CGI, surely.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
You would think anyway. They prove us wrong on a weekly basis when it comes to what they do in ILM. So yeah, I think it's a really fun character. It's just interesting, isn't it? Like there's all these kind of like, you just think you kind of get a handle on who's who in the galaxy. And then there's just like another person who's literally squirreled away, who's got all this lore and that. And as Sander was saying at the beginning, the map, I don't read much Aurebesh, picked up a few words, but I couldn't tell you, it feels to me is that obviously it's of some significance, at least, again, a deep dive into where we're going to find our Tatin. So where do we think we go in next week's episode? Because like we kind of narrowly escaped the New Republic X-Wing fighters, which always makes a nice cameo.
Yeah, but I was actually really expecting Carson Teva to come. Like, hey, it's a Filoni show, bring him in already. Like, oh wait, John L. What?
But I think that's the thing, isn't it? That's probably when you start to run the risk of being like, there's only 4 like New Republic X-Wing pilots in the whole of the galaxy. And I guess, as you guys were saying earlier on, we don't quite know whereabouts we roughly are. So we could be completely the opposite side of the galaxy to say where like the Mandalorian stuff's going on with that. So
that's true.
Yeah,
that's true. I mean, Jod did, as they left, grab that data card with all the things punched, which you assume are coordinates. So he made sure to grab that, and then he shot the computer, and so I guess to not be followed. But she's already called the rebels, but then they do some nifty maneuvering, partly just through the good fortune of Neil not really knowing what he's doing, and then Jod taking over, and he definitely knows what he's doing, and they hop away. So where they go next, I don't know, but he's definitely got that card. So it's whether or not we as an audience can't really determine quite yet, and just go on our gut. But you kind of think, well, if he uses that as any kind of coordinates to go to the next place they go to, is it going to lead them into trouble? Is it going to take them anywhere? Did she know where they were going? Was she just stalling? So I don't suppose we'll know till next week. But my gut,
and they did hit the ship, so maybe the ship is damaged. They have to pull over somewhere to repair first before they can go on.
Yeah, I think it's like that. I mean, because you could almost see, if this was an animation, this could be like one of those things where they, 6 seasons in and they're still not home.
Star Trek Voyager. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, totally. Star Trek Voyager.
Yeah.
But I suppose the problem is you probably don't want that. You probably want to get them back because, you want.
They've already been talking about a second season, about that, the little time jump, so you can allow the kids to grow up a bit. And the vibe to me, I mean, this was shot. When was this shot? About 18 months ago, probably longer than that. Easy, the kids have grown a bit. I mean, they're still kids. We saw them on Trafalgar Square the other day, and they're still kids, aren't they? They're not light years older than they were here or bigger than they were here. But nevertheless, if they can do a season of Skeleton Crew every, 3 or 4 years over time, and just not necessarily say when the next one's coming, then fantastic. Well, you've got your next Rogue Squadron.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it becomes like, it's a Stranger Things conundrum, isn't it? Especially if you're writing your characters are kids and you're not really moving their actual kind of like character development on a little bit. It kind of feels a little bit kind of like stale.
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, also I always dislike this idea of like, how many adventures can one person have? You kind of like but I think
says the James Bond fan.
How many stories can there fit between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi?
Well, exactly, right? Yeah. Exactly. But I think at the same time there's scope here. I mean, because I think it's there's enough intrigue in this show that is kind of keeping us kind of like, I mean, going to be guessing. I mean, and I don't think we're going to really know until either the end of this episode or maybe we won't. I hope, as with everything, and I always think like they're pretty good at kind of throwing little kind of like nuggets to try and connect stuff, especially to High Republic at the moment. But I always think, you know, the whole kind of point of this post Return of the Jedi is to get you to Force Awakens. And so you kind of go, okay, is there some like first order connection? Could it be connected to Exegol? Could it be something to do with, you know, are they the one to have funded all the ships, you know, and all the stuff like that? So it's interesting kind of ways about it. And we'll probably never know, but, or at least I never maybe spell it out. And it might just be there for you to kind of just kind of make your own assumptions, which is, I think, sometimes the best of Star Wars storytelling. Before we wrap up, Sander, where can people get hold of you if they want to come and shout at you or read more of your amazing guides and stuff? What's the best way to get in touch?
Basically, find my profile on Fantha Tracks. I mean, basically just Google my full name with Star Wars behind it. And you find easily my Wikipedia page, my Fantha Tracks page, my own website. It's basically just a resume, but yeah.
It's a good resume, so you know.
I'm lucky.
And we know where we can find Mr. Newbold. Me and you will be back next week, hopefully for an episode of Making Tracks before then. You can, as always, send in listeners' questions, thoughts, or theories. If anybody wants to hop on and join our crew, by all means, come and join us for an episode of Reaction Chat, and we can talk everything but the actual episode we're meant to be discussing. So if you want to do that, Mr. Newbold, tell you how you can do it.
Email radio@fanthatracks.com. Head to links.fanthatracks.com for links to our social media feeds, Fantha Tracks TV and Fantha Tracks Radio. Thanks to James Semple for the Fantha Tracks intro, Blues Harvest for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. New episodes drop Tuesdays and Fridays at 7 o'clock UK time. Our weekly news show, Good Morning Tatooine, goes live Sundays at 9 o'clock UK time on Facebook and YouTube. And remember, Fantha Tracks is absolutely free, so it costs nothing to stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news.
And that's me done for this episode, Mark.
Excellent. Lovely to chat to you both. It's been fun. And join us again very soon for another episode of Reaction Crew. And as always, remember, stay safe, take care. And remember, we all have a place in the great work.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's another episode of Making Tracks.